Welcome to 20 by 20, all things related to Wrestling Pro. I am KM, and that's Clark.
Mark. It's Mark. What's up, y'all? Hey, thanks for joining us tonight, 20 by 20, as you heard, all things wrestling. And glad to join us. It's episode 1 on a final closed episode. So, yes, thanks for joining in. Welcome. And so, episode 1, I don't think we're going to do season, so just episode 1. And
Yeah.
just two guys that are wrestling fans. They never been in the business that are talking things wrestling, having a good time, and here for some laughs and some good times.
So when did you start watching again? I forget.
You know, I was brought up to it with my brother. He's 3.5 years older than I am. He had me watch it. I'm going to say the early 90s. I think it was like 92, 93. I didn't really know anything about it. And I was, 6 or 7 at the time. So I didn't know what the heck was going on. So all I know is he said something about a guy named Hogan. I was like, whoever that is. He looked pretty big. And I was like, so I watched it here and there. Didn't know anything really what was going on. I guess the year, like you said, I really got started into is about between 95 and 96. And more or less. And then I probably more or less right when the NWO started going, was I remember that night very vividly. My brother ripped up all of his Hulk Hogan posters and threw everything had away Hulk Hogan, and I saw it. I didn't truly understand it because I didn't know what the big what heel was and what turned on the crowd and their fans were at that time, and yeah, it came pretty right away. I knew what was going on right after that, and then I guess you could say after that was definitely hooked. But yeah, I guess started off early 90s here and there, so it's been addicted to it since then. But,
so you mentioned 94, 95. Were you WCW or WWF?
I was more WCW. I guess. Well, starting out, I also saw some WWF. But I guess my brother had more on WCW at the time, I guess, more or less. And, back then, obviously Hogan in 93, 94, he took time off. But, anyway, 94 was. And, it was, it's going back and forth to whatever he had on. But I guess more or less WCW, when I started watching more in 95, this is cool. And enjoyed it. And, so I was like, saw Hogan there, saw Sting was awesome. That was my first. I saw him, I thought he was great. And it's like, man, I thought he was awesome. And seen Vader in there, and I thought it was weird as a kid to see Vader jump to WWF. I'm like, wait a minute. But I didn't know what jumping shit meant at the time. I was like kid, so I was like, I saw these guys, I thought they were really talented. Sting was awesome, and Hogan saw him, got no Hogan on the TV, and so I got really, and by that time frame, I was like, man, I was everything wrestling. Brother still went to it, For him, when NWO came around, we all cared about Hogan got beat up, and so it was interesting. Honestly, at that time, when the NWO came out, I didn't really know a lot about Diesel and Razor Ramon, and
right.
I seen them doing the fake Diesel with, obviously we all know now it's Kane and Glenn Jacobs, but they had Razor in their fake Diesel, fake Razor. That was part that I didn't understand. It's like, okay, these guys are on this other program, so what the heck's going on? And, you realize these guys ain't what they look like on the other channel. So I was like, okay. I realized, at that time, obviously, especially any youngins listening to this, there wasn't this thing called the internet way back then, so you had no way of looking up things, and so you had to kind of figure it out. And honestly, I'm sure a lot of people, at least our age and so forth, would understand this. Back then, I thought it was all real. I mean, literally everything was real. They hated each other, they liked each other, they fought for real. My dad told me so many times, like, yeah, this is put on, man. It's a show. There's a script. They train. I'm like, no, this guy named the Giant, he came out of nowhere. He fell off a building. he could have died.
So,
yeah,
I probably got into it right around 97, I think it was.
97. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was introduced to it because my grandmother that lived out of state was a fan of it, and she convinced my mom to order the pay-per-view. And I can't remember which pay-per-view it was, but I remember sitting there watching and gaining interest that way. I didn't even know, like, my my exposure to wrestling up until that point is I know she got me a ball when I was a kid. And it had like Macho Man. I can only tell you what I remember seeing: Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, and Bret Hart. It was a WWF ball. It was just a little bouncy ball. Didn't know anything about it. All I knew is that Macho Man was on the Slim Jim commercials. That's all I could tell you about it.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yep.
So by the time I got into it, Hulk Hogan was already a bad guy as Hollywood Hogan. So this whole the thing where everyone freaked out, I didn't experience that firsthand. NWO was already a thing too. And I remember, like you said, people thought it was real. I was one of them. So I had, my dad tried to do the same thing because my dad was not a wrestling fan. My dad tried to, explain to me. The only thing except for he's just like, do you think that they would let people wear boots and fight each other? I'm like, well, they're adults, so I don't see what does that matter. Like, I'm like, would you get into a fight and wear boots? He goes, well, yeah. I'm like, well, there you go. Like, it didn't make sense to me. It was a little bit different because, like, I got my brother into it, my half brother into it, and I tried to explain to him it was scripted and choreographed, and I took it another step. I showed him how it was. So, like, I set up a choke slam. I had him push up off my shoulder. I had him learn how they do, like the RKO, how they hold on to the body so they know when to jump, things like that. Yeah. People that are not wrestling fans don't know how to explain it properly. Just like,
oh no, it's honestly, I see that both sides of the track. Sometimes they don't know how to explain it. And of course, you have the ones who are not into it, who literally look at it in a sense of it ignorant, not ignorant, bad, but ignorant, like they don't really understand. It's like, well, it's all fake. It's not actually fake. It's it's like you're. Well, I don't understand why you watch it. It's fake. Well, why do you watch a movie for a TV show? It's scripted. It's like these guys and girls, they train to do it. It's. So what do you mean by fake? You talking about fake punches or fake chair shots? It's a connect. It's a connect. They still hit them. So it's not fake, but it's just that it's not full blown. We're not here to literally hurt you. It's
right. And I heard this on the Raven effect, but Raven did a good comparison because when someone was like, "Oh, it's fake," he goes, "I hate to break it to you, but James Bond's not a real guy."
Yeah, exactly. I use that comparison, not James Bond, but that's a good comparison. But I was like, I bring up action movies and stuff. I'm like, that time they blew up that bus movie, that's fake. It's like it was scripted. It wasn't just it wasn't like it was like a real bus in the real world, but it's more or less it happened.
Yeah, and when it comes to like. With wrestling, it's an action series that doesn't have the advantages of cuts.
Yeah,
quick camera work. So they have to kind of overdo it in the form of selling to kind of get the point across. And when I got into it, there was no telling me Goldberg was not a real fighter. The way they presented him made it seem like the dude just wanted to hurt people. And when I became a wrestling fan, I was a fan of Kevin Nash. DDP, Goldberg, Raven. Scott Hall was an off and on thing because I don't know what it was about Scott Hall, mainly his promos, I guess. But I was probably kind of brought in, but I'm like, this is a bad dude that keeps screwing over his friend. And Sting was another guy I was really into.
I thought Scott Hall's promos were actually, even if he was a heel, I thought it was catchy. Yeah, to me, my viewpoint is just how I felt about it. It was like it was catchy. It was just, kind of nonchalant, laid back, I guess. It's just kind of cool. It was like he wasn't, especially when he first came in. He had that razor kind of
Swagger.
Yeah, swagger is a good word for it. And I was like, and he kind of, but he evolved a little bit past that over time. But yeah, I thought he had good promo in my view. I couldn't get into Nash. Never was a Nash guy, but it's Goldberg he's a beast.
Well, for Nash, it was mainly because he was part of the leader of the Wolfpack. Yeah. And sounds weird to say because Nash was probably in his 30s or 40s at this point.
Nash?
At
that point, yeah.
Yeah, but he portrayed like this cool character, you know what I mean? And that's what kind of drew me in.
Yeah, it's actually, I don't know if you did this, but when I was going to school, was like that diamond cutter signal was a huge thing. It was so many people were doing that thing. You saw DDP there. It's like everybody did that diamond up in the air, 6-hand signal. Man, that was a popular thing back then. And back then, it was like most everybody was in wrestling. It was every single Tuesday morning. Everybody's talking about what happened on Nitro or on Raw, or at least back then before Nitro. It was like people talking about what happened on Raw.
Yeah, and when it came to Raw, like I didn't start watching Raw until like 99, I think.
99.
Right around there. Yeah.
I snuck it in. My brother and I snuck it in when we were kids. When I got to the Attitude Era, it was your folks or mom wasn't.
Oh no, she wouldn't let me watch that, and she wouldn't let me watch South Park.
Yeah,
which is weird because I watch that now as an adult.
Yeah,
with the show.
Yeah. It was, absolutely. And it was, she wasn't a fan a lot, obviously what was going on, but my brother and I tried to sneak it in a little bit. And her first, one of her first signs of not liking it was my brother wanted a t-shirt of Austin and had him holding, or his hands are holding a WWF title belt with his two fingers, or two, it's flicking off. Like, I don't think so. So
I remember it was probably like 99. I'm like, all right, Mom, come on, let me watch WWF. She goes, we'll flip to it real quick. My mom flips to WWF Raw, and there's two girls mud wrestling. And you're not watching this. And I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah.
Why now? Why? Because like I flip to it every now and then. There was nothing too crazy. Like a couple times I flipped to it, it had Kane on or something like that. And the one time I'm trying to sell my mom on this whole thing, two girls mud wrestling.
Just at that timing, man. I was like, I don't think so. Yeah.
And I remember Jerry Lawler was standing next to the mud thing, yelling about puppies, and I'm like, great. Like,
wow.
I couldn't have picked a worse time. Man. And so when it comes to like Jerry Lawler and stuff like that in the old era that we're referring to, one of the things that I've always missed was the commentary. I don't really enjoy the WWE. Almost said F. The WWE polish that they try to do to try to present it like ABC Sports. It doesn't seem sincere. When you had JR and Lawler, it sounded like two guys that just enjoyed watching the show, talking back and forth about whatever it was.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
And the only people that have weirdly been able to replicate it have been JR, Shivani, Excalibur, Taz, and Jericho.
And
over in AEW. Yeah, they cycle through them. Those are the only ones that actually put on like a commentary that doesn't feel like a WWE polish. Impact has their own commentator in the form of Josh Matthews, but you could tell Josh learned the WWE style.
Oh yeah, you can see that. It's just the thing that make what made JR and the King so special and being such legends as a commentator. Talking about King as a commentator more or less. He was a wrestler, but JR's talked about, they weren't really necessarily scripted. They just, they had things, bullet points they had to look at one point, and so King's like, I'm not gonna do by script. I want to be natural, but I prefer not even know the winners and just be a fan watching it and calling it the way we see it, and being two guys here calling it, and it's they had the experience. It ain't like sitting here talking, but it's Just that's what made it so more